Hey, what's good, fam? It's Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com breaking down Ohio State versus Alabama. The ultimate preview is here. Definitely hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. I'm going to be talking about the Ohio State offense, the Ohio State defense. I'm going to do the same thing with Alabama's offense, Alabama's defense. We'll talk about the special teams. We'll talk about key players to watch, things that stand out, what we think is going to happen in this particular matchup. We'll start with Ohio State's offense, but first, give us a thumbs up. Be sure and like and subscribe. We appreciate you guys being here through this entire season. As you know, with Ohio State, it starts with Justin Fields. The way that he played against Indiana in Northwestern stands out to me because I think the way that he played against Clemson, you're like, what's going on here, right? I think it's inconsistency that we've seen from him, but the way that he played against Clemson is worrisome if you're an Alabama Crimson Tide football fan. So against Indiana, he threw 3 interceptions. Against Northwestern, he threw 0 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in the Big Ten championship game. Then in the Sugar Bowl against Clemson, biggest game of the season, kid balls out. Looks like the top quarterback in the entire country. 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. You're like, what is going on here? I think overall, Justin Fields is a very quality quarterback, and I think he's going to flourish in the NFL. I think, from whatever the inconsistency's been this season, I can't really pinpoint that. I don't follow Ohio State enough, but I think when you dive into the analytics and you kind of look at what goes on, and especially looking at that last game against Clemson, you see that Fields has a couple of key factors that really jump out to me. Number one, he can make you pay in zone read situations because of his ability to run, right? You cannot allow this guy to escape, to get outside the pocket. Now, he's not going to run a lot, but he can make you miss. He can pick up first downs, and he'll keep the defense honest because if he's able to get a first down, keeps the chains moving. He's got a gigantic arm, got a lot of velocity. He can zip the ball, and if any of his wide receivers who are very talented, we'll talk about them in a second, if they can get behind the secondary, Justin Fields will make you pay dearly. Overall, he's got a grade on Pro Football Focus of 93.3. It's extremely high. 1,900 yards in the season, 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. His efficiency rating, 186.7, 73% on the season. So if Justin Fields is on, Alabama's defense is going to have their work cut out for them clearly. I also really, really like Trey Sermon of Ohio State. I think he's a guy that can give Alabama a lot of problems. I didn't realize how good this guy was until I started digging into film and really watching him go. I think he could be a major, major problem if Alabama is not able to stop him. He's got a great ability to get to that second level. He's got a pop to him. He's very explosive. He's got speed. He's athletic. He's got, as I mentioned, a great burst, and he'll break tackles. He'll get to that second level on the season. 868 yards, 4 touchdowns. Not an overwhelming amount of stats. Again, these guys have only played 7 games, but I think his ability to reel off big plays is very scary. So if Alabama cannot stop Sermon, who's number 8 on Ohio State, they're going to be in trouble. So Justin Fields, Sermon, very marquee guys that you got to watch for Ohio State clearly. When you look at the wide receiving unit for Ohio State, these guys are super, super talented as well. Number 5, Jameson Williams, 40 receptions, 673 yards, 5 touchdowns. Number 2 is their main guy, right? Chris Olave, 42 receptions, 660 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's got that big playability. Jameson Williams, Olave, those guys can get behind you. Don't forget about number 6. He's another speed type wide receiver. So, whether they're outside receivers or inside receivers, very, very good in space, can make kind of that circus catch. Those guys are a problem. The problem could be that's tight end, number 88. You guys checked him out? Jeremy Ruckert. He got 3 touchdown passes against Clemson. Who is going to know where he is at all time? Because I think that this guy is ultra talented. He's going to fill up space. He's strong. He can catch the football wherever it's put. So 88, you got to definitely know where he's at all time. When you look to Ohio State's offensive line, I think they are fantastic. Number 75, left tackle, 91.2 on Pro Football Focus. Number 55, their guard. Left guard, 78.2 on Pro Football Focus. Number 71, he kind of looks like potentially the weak point, if any of their offensive line, at 64.8. And then their right guard, 67.3, number 52. And then their right tackle, both their tackles are extremely good. Their right tackle, number 78, 82.1 on Pro Football Focus. I think their offensive line is very good at helping Trey Sermon find holes. They're able to get a good push on the defensive line. And I think they're able to create a nice, clean pocket for Justin Fields. So it's critical for these guys to keep Justin Fields clean. As you know, Alabama's going to try to get William Anderson off the edge or Christian Barmore up the middle, but these guys are going to be very talented. If you're looking for a great matchup, keep your eye on the offensive line for Ohio State going against Alabama's pass rush, who has been great. And we'll talk about them here in a second. Overall, I think their offense is fantastic. I mean, you look at the overall stats that they put up on the season, 43 points per game. They're very balanced, 272 yards average per game, and they're also passing for 272 yards per game. So a very balanced approach. Alabama hasn't played a lot of teams that are balanced. Ohio State certainly is balanced. Overall, their offense is averaging 544.9 yards per game, which is very admirable. I know they've only played 7 games, but still, I mean, those stand out to me. Let's talk about the Ohio State defense. Now, as you just heard, I'm really high on the Ohio State offense. After breaking down film, I mean, give those guys credit. I mean, ultra talented. I do like Ohio State's pass rush, but I'll tell you where I think Alabama can take advantage of Ohio State's defense. But let's talk about this pass rush real quick. Number 00, Jonathan Cooper. That guy is a beast, right? 91.3 pass rush Pro Football Focus grade. This guy is going to try to get heat on Mac Jones. Alabama's offensive line, as you know, has been fantastic. They'd be even better if they had Landon Dickerson. And Chris Owens is going to have his hands full with pressure coming up the middle. Haskell Garrett, number 92, has a Pro Football Focus pass rush grade of 90.8. So as you can see, these two guys have extremely high Pro Football Focus grades. That means they like to get to the quarterback. They can get heat on the quarterback. Number 6, he doesn't play a lot, but he'll come after the quarterback as well. Teron Vincent is named number 6. And then number 11, he's another guy who comes off the edge. Tyreek Smith, 77.0 overall Pro Football Focus grade. Number 5 is another guy that will get pressure. So these guys like pressure. If you go back and watch that Sugar Bowl or any of their games this season, they really like to crowd the box. Some guys will sit back. They'll send a lot of pressure. They like to get heat on the quarterback. Now, Mac Jones has been clean this year for the most part, but these guys are going to come after him, I promise you. Their linebackers, number 47, big tackler, great tackler in open space. So is Tuff Borland, who is number 32. So their linebackers, they're inside linebackers. They're not overly athletic, but they're very good tacklers in open space. I do think that the one mismatch in this game is going to be Alabama's wide receivers versus Ohio State's secondary. I'm telling you, number 24 for Ohio State, Shaun Wade, okay, he is going to have a problem with Alabama. Wide receivers. Whoever's on him, look for Alabama to target number 24 again and again and again. He had trouble all game long against Clemson. They need to go after him as many times as possible. His Pro Football Focus grade, 66.2. Number 7 as well, Sevyn Banks. He was also targeted in the Sugar Bowl. His Pro Football Focus grade, 67.7. So, look, we've been talking about Jalen Waddle coming back. You already have the Heisman Trophy winner. You have John Mechie, who's been balling out. You have Jaleel Billingsley. If Alabama can get the football, if Mac Jones can get the football to these guys, then Ohio State is going to have their hands full in the secondary. I'm telling you, that is going to be the biggest problem. So if Alabama's offensive line can hold the pass rush and create one-on-one situations in the secondary, Alabama is going to score as many times as possible, okay? Shaun Wade, as mentioned, Pro Football Focus grade 66.2. He's a corner. Sevyn Banks, he's another corner, grade of 67.7. Marcus Williams, his grade on Pro Football Focus, he's also a corner, 55.7. Latham Ransom, he's a safety, 76.1. Seems like their best secondary player is safety. And then Josh Proctor, he's a safety, 69.4 Pro Football Focus grade. So when you look at Ohio State's defense, yeah, they got a great pass rush. Linebackers very capable. Secondary, completely suspect. So Alabama knows that clearly. So watch that matchup as we go into Monday night. Let's talk about the Alabama offense. I mean, I think the biggest thing going into this game is how are they going to use Jalen Waddle, right? You look at all the ways that Alabama's offense has been super effective this year through 12 games. I mean, just look at the overall statistics this year that this team has put up. 48.2 points per game. And they're very balanced. As I mentioned about Ohio State, Alabama is also very balanced. In my opinion, the most balanced team in college football. That's why they're here. 349.3 yards per game, 185.7 yards per game. Okay, so we get back to how is this offense going to use Jalen Waddle? They're going to use him as a decoy. They're going to put him in the slot. Are they going to take advantage of some of these mismatches we're talking about? I think absolutely. You have Devontae Smith to worry about, who's completely balled out, 105 receptions. He's a touchdown every time he catches it. You have John Mechie, who's been playing at a very high level. And you look at these mismatches, right? For example, Devontae Smith, 94.0 Pro Football Focus grade, going against either Sean Wade or Sevyn Banks, who has a Pro Football Focus grade of 66.2 or 67.7, right? Those are mismatches. So I think that's one of the areas that I'm really curious in. I think we're all curious to see, how does Alabama use Jalen Waddle? And if Mac Jones can stay clean in the pocket, he's going to have a field day, in my opinion. When we look to Alabama's offensive line, they're going to have their hands full. We already talked about that. Ohio State's defensive line, their edge rushers, very good. With that said, Alex Leatherwood and Evan Neal have been fantastic this year. This is the reason these guys won the Joe Moore Award, right? Top offensive line in the country. Great tackles. Alex Leatherwood, 79.4 in Pro Football Focus grade. Evan Neal, 83.1 Pro Football Focus grade. Emil Ekiyor has been great. He's a guard we don't talk a lot about, but he's had a fantastic season. And Deontay Brown, same thing. Chris Owens, I think all eyes are on him. His Pro Football Focus grade, 50.8. Okay? So when you look for pressure up the middle, I kind of have my eyes on that. The good news is that Najee Harris has also been good in pass rush. And Najee Harris is also a very effective receiver on checkdowns, on swing routes. He has 36 receptions on the year. So if the heat is coming on, look for Mac Jones to dump it off to Najee Harris. We already saw how he balled out against Florida, right? Steve Sarkisian did a fantastic job orchestrating that offense, putting him in different situations. So Najee Harris is kind of the one player that doesn't get talked about enough. I'm so glad that he won the Doak Walker Award. 89.6 Pro Football Focus grade. And you look at what he's done statistically, it's been ridiculous. 229 attempts, 1,300 yards, 27 total touchdowns, average per rush, 6.1. Right. So looking at Alabama's overall offense, their numbers, Mac Jones, 4,000 yards, 36 touchdowns. Najee Harris, as we just mentioned, 1,300 yards. Devontae Smith, 105 receptions for 1,600 yards. And John Mechie, 47 receptions. Keep your eye on Billingsley. I think he's a guy that could create problems for Ohio State. So even though he's not mentioned right here in the statistical category, don't sleep on Billingsley. As we mentioned, very, very dangerous player. All right, let's look at Alabama's defense, okay? You look at the Alabama defense and, how are these guys going to stop this ferocious Ohio State offense coming in? Well, I'll tell you how. I think with pressure on the quarterback, trying to make Justin Fields throw when he's uncomfortable. I think that when you look at Alabama's entire season, when they've been able to get to the quarterback, when they've been able to put pressure on the quarterback, they've looked fantastic. So rise up time for Christian Barmore, who's been fantastic this year. 90.4 on Pro Football Focus. That's great. I mean, the guy is Alabama's best defensive lineman, period. I look for a strong game from William Anderson at the edge position, right? 81.3 as just a true freshman. So the pressure is going to come from those two. It's very important that those two have a big game in this critical matchup because it's going to be instrumental to get heat on Justin Fields or at least make him feel uncomfortable. You cannot allow him to be comfortable because he will pick you apart. Chris Allen, I think he's had a better second half of the season, to be honest. So, he's got to the quarterback a couple times. He's not as athletic as William Anderson, but Chris Allen has been playing better. When you look to the middle of the field, Dylan Moses and Christian Harris, these guys have to wrap up. You look at your defensive, your bigs in the middle, DJ Dell, Justin Ebogbe, Phil Mathis, those guys have to be able to stop Trey Sermon. They have to be able to limit big plays because, as I mentioned, Sermon can create problems for Alabama, and he will create problems if you cannot tackle him, if you're not athletic to switch up the fields, if he on cutbacks. I mean, the guy is a problem. So you look to your interior linebackers. Those guys have to be able to read when Sermon has got the ball, number one, and be able to tackle him, number two. when we look at the Alabama secondary, I think this is going to be a fantastic matchup, okay? As I talked about, I think Alabama can really exploit Ohio State's secondary, but with Ohio State's receivers versus Alabama's secondary, this is a great matchup. As mentioned, you got Jeremy Ruckert for Ohio State. It's the big tight end. Who's going to be on him? Who's going to be watching over him? For Alabama's secondary, as you know, Patrick Surtain, who I felt was robbed from winning the Jim Thorpe Award, felt he's the best defensive back in all of college football. He has a Pro Football Focus grade of 89.7. He's the guy. It's time for him to step up and make big-time plays. Yeah, he's been very consistent, but you really haven't seen him get like a pick six or come up with a big play. I think that happens in this game. DeMarco Hellams, Malachi Moore, these are two additional names that you need to know. Two guys who need to step up. DeMarco Hellams is your thumper. Daniel Wright will probably play along with him, right, at the safety position along with Jordan Battle. They kind of like to mix those safeties between DeMarco Hellams and Daniel Wright. Sometimes Daniel Wright has been suspect to get beat. Other times he's come up with plays. Jordan Battle, he's another younger guy. It's going to be tough for this Alabama secondary to deal with this Ohio State wide receiving group all night long. These guys are very talented. They're going to give up plays, but if these guys can create plays, all the better. Josh Job's another corner that's going to have his hands full. So you look for Josh Jobe, Patrick Surtain. The thing I like about this matchup is these defensive backs for Alabama, they're bigger, right? They're 6'2", they're close to 200 pounds, so they can, even though they are bigger in size, they also still have speed. That's what's going to put them in the league on Sundays. So when I look to this matchup, I'm really excited to check out this matchup between Ohio State's wide receivers going against Alabama's defensive backs. All right, let's look at the special teams comparison real quick. I'll just do kickers and punters for the time being, and you kind of look to, we'll start with Alabama, okay? Will Reichert has been fantastic this year on special teams. I mean, he's, 12 of 12, 13 of 13 on PATs, and he's been fantastic on extra points. I mean, the guy has been perfect all season long. I think Charlie Scott has been a welcome addition. He's been doing much better from the beginning of the season to this year. His overall grade is 64.3. And then to go back on Will Reichert's statistics, he's 77 of 77 on PATs and 13 for 13 on field goals. For Ohio State, you got number 95. He's our kicker. He's 24 of 24 this year on PATs, and then he has 5 of 7 on field goals. Number 91 is their punter, 22 punts, and seems like the better punter. He has an average of 45.5. Again, that's in 22 punts. Charlie Scott for the Alabama Crimson Tide has kicked 20 punts. So when you look to which team can flip the fields, I think that's going to go to Ohio State. So overall, I mean, I really like this matchup, and I think the keys to the game for me are this. Number one, put heat or make Justin Fields uncomfortable. I think if you make him uncomfortable, I think the secondary is able to make plays. But it comes down to William Anderson. It comes down to Christian Barmore. I think number two, you got to be able to stop Trey Sermon. This guy is a problem. He's a very underrated running back. I think he's going to be a problem if Alabama cannot stop him. A guy that can keep the chains moving, a guy that can rip off big plays. I mean, you got to come up and you got to create big hits on him. You got to strip the football. Whatever you got to do, you got to stop the big playability from Sermon. I think the biggest thing is for Alabama, and this is my third key to the game, I think is Mac Jones simply staying efficient. He's done a fantastic job this year of being the most efficient quarterback in college football. You look at 77%. If he can come into this game and stay calm, stay poised, and hit Devontae Smith, John Mechie, Jalen Waddle, and he can be efficient, he doesn't have to go for these home run plays. He hasn't done that really, right? You kind of look to the fact that he goes across the middle, or he kind of on his swing routes or his screen passes, or, he might take a shot every now and then, but he hasn't made bad decisions. If he can stay clean in the pocket and Alabama's offensive line can keep the heat off him, I think Alabama's wide receivers will be the difference in this game. I really do. I look to some major mismatches when I look to Alabama's wide receivers versus Ohio State's defensive back. So I think that's the key to the game. Those three keys right there. Let me know what you think. And, of course, I want to hear from you inside the comment box. What do you think will be the major key to this game when you look overall at Alabama versus Ohio State? Your main key to the game. Let me know in the comment box. I hope you've enjoyed this thorough preview of Alabama versus Ohio State. The game will be on Monday evening. Can't wait to watch it. Alabama versus Ohio State Monday night for the national championship. My name is Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com. Hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. We appreciate you more than you know. Catch you soon right here on BamaInsider.com.